Everyone. My name is Priscilla Tennant. The pronouns I use are she and her, and you are welcome to Chestnut Hill United this morning. I have brown, curly, short hair and glasses. Zoom allows you to have a live transcript. If it's helpful for you to have the words on the screen, you can look for the CC live transcript button so that you can see the words, if that's helpful. We're so glad you're here. May today's service comfort you or challenge you, as is your particular need, or maybe both. The place that many of us are gathered, including the small team in the sanctuary, is the part of the traditional territory of the Lenape people called Lenape-Hoking. So just take a moment of gratitude for whatever land you find yourself on and the ancestors who stewarded it before us. Just take a moment to get settled as we usher you into worship gently. We're going to hear our prelude. The song is called Love Longing by George Winston, and it's played by our own Kyoko Makino. Thank you, Kyoko, for that offering. As we prepare for our upcoming opening sentences, I'm looking for one volunteer reader to read the part of leader. If you're willing to do that, if you could just raise your hand, and I'll see who I see first here. Oh, I see the Critch family. I see Eli raising his hand. Great. So when it comes time, Eli's going to read the leader part, and the people part will be read by the folks in the sanctuary. But at this moment, we turn to the sanctuary so that our singing group can lead us in our opening song, What a Covenant. Please join in from home. It's time for our opening sentences. We'll help
You're
get
the leader. Go ahead, Eli.
God meets us at the sites of life's bleakest encounters. Hope catches us by surprise and miracles ordinary and extravagant. In the people's persistence toward liberation of life. Faithfully, love rises to reassure us. Amen.
Thank you so much for your leadership, Eli, and worship team. We appreciate those words. There's quite a few announcements. If it helps you to take notes, feel free to do so. The first thing that I want to mention, which might be coming up, well, actually, let's start with gratitude to our worship team who is making today happen. Terry is on tech, Sandy and Stephanie are on camera duty, Patty is acting as our usher, Hannah is our greeter, And we're so thankful for the people who make up our singing group, Debbie, Kate, Dan, Jay, Kip, and Linda. Thank you all so much for making today happen. You're invited to join one of 3 town hall focus group discussions. The first opportunity will be today during service right after our time with children. The way to indicate your interest in doing that would be either to use your reactions button and raise your virtual hand so we can make note that you want to be part of that breakout room. And we'll give you some other ways that you can do that. But feel free to do that. If you know you want to be part of that, you can do that whenever you're ready to during the announcements, and we'll keep a tally of people who want to be part of that discussion. There'll be 2 other opportunities to do that on Tuesday, one at 1 p.m. and one at 7 p.m. We're trying to make it as convenient for you so that if you don't want to miss the sermon and the rest of church, you have another opportunity to give us your input about what Sunday school programming should look like for our kids. You're invited to join the Sci-Fi Book Club. They're discussing the book Binti, and that's happening on Tuesday, March 1st at 7 p.m. We're moving back to in-person hybrid worship on March 6th. We're really excited, and we want to tell you what to expect if you are able to join us in the sanctuary. There will be a pre-registration process so that we can limit capacity to 50 people. And the things you need to know is that, there'll be some precautions that we're taking to keep us all safer. Mask will be required for anyone older than 2 years of age. There will be singing, so make sure you're comfortable with that, although we will be masked while we're singing. Pastors will unmask for to have a better auditory experience for the people joining at a distance, but we're also going to be taking antigen tests every Sunday before going to church to make sure that we're keeping everyone safe. Children are welcome, of course, but there is currently not any Sunday school happening. And they'll be invited to come to the steps for our time with children. And as a family, you can decide if you're comfortable with the spacing involved in that, or if you'd rather keep kids with you in the pews. And then we will continue to connect through Zoom so that people can join virtually. This is information about our upcoming Holy Week. Ash Wednesday is going to happen as an online service on March 2nd at 7 p.m. Maundy Thursday is on April 14th at 6:30. There'll be an in-person only potluck Last Supper meal with optional foot washing. And there'll also be some DIY instructions so that if you can't attend in person, but you want to do something at home, we'll provide you some guidance so that you can do it yourself. On Good Friday, April 15th, there'll be more details about that service. And then Easter Sunday service is going to be at April 17th at 11 a.m. And it will be an in-person and hybrid service. So lots of good things coming up for you to prepare for. We're having an auction. Our fundraising team is working on that. It'll be the week of March 20th to the 27th. It'll be online, and we need items. There's some things that are already going to be offered. There's a pool membership, a weekend in the Poconos, some High Point Cafe coffee delivery. If you have something that you would like to donate for that auction, there's information about how to do that there. You can contact Molly Davis at that email or reach out to one of the pastors. Free online yoga is still happening on Sundays at 2 p.m. The dates are listed there, and the link is sent out in email. If you have any questions or feedback for Church Council, you can send an email to churchcouncil@chestnuthillunited.org. They are very interested in hearing from you. If you want to help plan Linda's farewell celebration, if event planning is your thing and you're good at celebrations, we invite you to join us on February 24th, which is this week at 7 p.m. So that we can decide when, where, and how. So consider being part of that discussion. Prayer requests can be sent to prayers@chestnuthillunited.org so that pastors can be praying for you on an ongoing basis. And then the additional 2 Christian Ed Town Hall meetings will happen this Tuesday at 1 p.m. and 7 p.m. And there'll be email links if you want to participate in that. I'm going to turn it over to Linda with just a final reminder that you can either raise your virtual hand or put in the chat that just the word join, and we will add you to the list of people who are going to join us. The people that we want to hear from are, if you're a young person who wants to give input, if you have a school-age child, or if you're just an adult in our community who is interested in talking about what we think programming should be for young people, please consider joining us.
Thanks, Priscilla. Thanks so much. I'm Linda Noonan. My pronouns are she and her, and I'm here in the sanctuary, and I'm on the steps. So I'm here by myself, and it feels a little lonely up here. But I wanted to come up on the steps today, and I'm looking over here because I can see some of the kids up here. I'm on the steps because I'm thinking about our kids, and I'm thinking about a bunch of you that I see. I think I see that there are a bunch of you in worship. Yes, hi, Maisie and Eli. I see you waving. So I think I saw Maisie and Eli. I saw Henrik. I saw Nevaeh and Adrian and Elena and Josiah. I think I saw maybe behind a parent. I'm not sure if Henry and Claire are there, or Lucille and Wesley, or Tia and MJ or Emma. But I see some of you. I see you, Henrik. It's so good to see you. I see some of you on the screen, and I'm thinking about a bunch of you, and thinking about a bunch of the kids that aren't on the screen and aren't with us here today. We are getting ready to think about coming back to church, into the building, and I know some of you and some of your parents are talking about what that might look like, and what Sunday school might look like, and what it might mean to be back in here together. And so I'm up on the steps holding this space for you, waiting for you to come back. Some of us are in the sanctuary. I think they're also imagining and remembering what it meant to sit up here on the steps. And so for the kids that are here today, I'm wondering if any of you have any special memories or thoughts you have about the time that you have been in church on the steps. Do any of you remember what that was like? And do any of you want to share anything about that? Eli, I see your hand is up. Go ahead. Did we change the settings?
There we go.
There we go. Great.
I remember being scared walking up in front of the whole entire church.
Wow. Okay. Now, I'll bet you there are a lot of church people that think, Eli, scared of being in front of the whole church? People that are in the sanctuary right now are laughing because, Eli, you have just shared so much with us about your life, so much with us about God, about what it means to be church, that it really helps me to remember that there was a time when you were actually a little afraid. Are you still afraid of that, or did anything?
A little, but barely.
What's that?
Barely.
Barely. Well, your presence up here and in Zoom has been such a gift to this church. Thank you for sharing that. What else? Juniper, I see your hand up. Do you remember being on the steps at church?
Me and my friends sometimes go up there and pretend to be in a choir.
And pretend to be what?
In a choir.
In the choir? Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, you don't have to pretend anymore because we would love to have you singing with us. Oh my gosh. I do remember us spending a lot of good time up here on the steps. And So Juniper, what do you think Zinnia will think about being on the steps at church? What do you think that'll be like for her?
I don't know, but right now she's eating Mom's phone.
Is she? Well, yep, she sure is. One of the things that I have loved so much over the last 21 years is watching many of you guys, when you were tiny, before you could talk, and you started to learn to talk right in front of us. And we got to watch you learn to do all these amazing things. Ah, thank you, Juniper. Megan, yeah, is there somebody, is that a kid? A kid that, okay, that's just put me in the breakout room when it's time. Cool. Emma, I saw you there. What do you think about the steps? I know you have some memories of the steps.
So I definitely remember the steps. Every time when we went to church, I would always be looking forward to the time when we got to go up onto the steps and I get to share. And every time I'd be like, what can I share this time? What can I say?
Yes. Yes. I just remember you sharing such really big and important things when you came up here. So as you were coming up to the steps, you were thinking yourself like, oh, what do I have to share this time? Oh, that is so great. I know there are some kids that are now really big and old and in college and out of college who used to practice what they were going to share on the steps when they would be driving on their way to church. Wow, thank you, Emma. Adrian, I see you. Is there anything that you want to say? Do you remember, though, being on the steps? You do, okay. Are you looking forward to being back on the steps sometime? Good. We are really looking forward to you being back here. Thanks. Hey, Tia, I see you. Is there anything you want to say? Do you remember being on the steps at all? Oh, you're on mute.
I will come back and see when I can come back and be on the steps.
Oh, I can't wait for you to come back and be on the steps. I'm going to save a place for you right here, okay? You've got a place saved right here. Can't wait. Thank you. Anybody else? Any other kids? Well, we are here and we are waiting for you, and we can't wait for you to come back, and we can't wait to see you either on the steps or on Zoom or in any other way that makes sense, and we just miss you and we love you very much. Yeah, Tia? Oh, hey, hi, MJ. Did you want to say something else?
Oh, sorry, I didn't realize we were unmuted.
Well, we're thinking about you all, so can't wait to see you. Thank you. And I think as I walk to the other end of the sanctuary, if there are people still who want to join that conversation, that important conversation on what it's going to mean for us to actually get ready to have our children back on the steps, please raise your digital hand, and Kip will help organize a breakout room. Anything else we need before we do that? We're learning all kinds of things about how to be church. And sometimes it's really hard, sometimes it's frustrating, sometimes it's fun, and they're all ways that we can be together. So this is great that we can have some people in one room and some people in another room. Is there anything you want me to announce? Oh, okay, no problem. We're still working on it. Do you want me to wait, or should I go ahead and start? If you don't get invited to a breakout room and you were interested in doing that, in the next couple minutes, Kip, they can send a chat to you. Is that right? You can send a chat to Kip. Well, in the meantime, I will get started with our first reading. It's a reading by Jan Richardson. Hers is a voice that we often bring into this space. I particularly like this. It is called Blessing for the Brokenhearted. It comes from a whole book of hers that is filled with blessings for people who are in grief. It is a very beautiful book called Cure for Sorrow. This is Blessing for the Brokenhearted. Let us agree for now that we will not say the breaking makes us stronger, or that it is better to have this pain than to have done without this love. Let us promise we will not tell ourselves time will heal the wound when every day our waking opens it anew. Perhaps for now, it can be enough to simply marvel at the mystery of how a heart so broken can go on beating, as if it were made for precisely this, as if it knows the only cure for love is more of it, as if it sees the heart's sole remedy for breaking is to love still, as if it trusts that its own persistent pulse is the rhythm of a blessing we cannot begin to fathom, but will save us nonetheless. For our scripture reading this morning, we are going to hear just a very short couple verses from two Psalms. The first is Psalm 130, and the second is Psalm 126. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord. Lord, hear my voice. Let your ears be attentive to the voice of my supplications. Now, if supplications isn't a word you use a lot or just kind of rode right by you, I will share with you the translation that comes from what's called the Message and the translation of this verse, which carries the same urgency. A translation of that verse is this: Help, God, I have hit rock bottom. Please hear my cry for help. Listen hard, open your ears, listen to my cries for mercy. And then from Psalm 126. When the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dream. Then our mouth was filled with laughter and our tongue with shouts of joy. Then it was said among the nations, the Lord has done great things for them. The Lord has done great things for us, and we rejoiced. Restore our fortunes, O Lord, like the watercourses in the Negeb. May those who sow in tears reap with shouts of joy. Those who go out weeping, bearing the seed for sowing, shall come home with shouts of joy, carrying their sheaves. It was about 9 o'clock on Tuesday, September 11th, 2001, 12 hours after that first plane hit that first tower. Hal Tausig, a former pastor here, and I had been in a staff meeting together when we heard the news. We immediately called the rabbi at Mishkan Shalom, a Jewish community who for about 5 years made this building their holy home and worshiped here each week in the sanctuary. We all agreed that we needed to come together that evening, and we did, lots of us. Some of you here today maybe were in this room then. We sang and prayed in English and in Hebrew, songs and prayers that our congregation knew, songs and prayers that their congregation knew. At that point, no one knew anything about what had happened or why. We just knew we needed to be together, to mourn and grieve, to hold and be held. The service ended. This room was still packed with people who didn't seem to want to leave, finding solace in collective grief and reluctant to face whatever lay beyond that night. One of our church members came up to me after the service, and like so many, she was weeping deeply. She asked if we could talk. In that crowded room, there was nowhere for us to go, so the pews were still filled with people, so we moved to the quietest corner of the room I could find over there by the piano. She was crying so hard that it took a while for her to catch enough breath. And as I waited, I found myself trying to remember if she had family connections in New York City, wondering if someone she was close to worked in the towers or might have been missing. I was trying to anticipate what might come next. Then she got enough air to tell me that she had had a miscarriage several years before. As soon as she said it, a horrified look came over her face, and she started profusely apologizing for even thinking about something like that in the midst of all that so many people and our whole country had just lost. "Why am I feeling this now?" she cried, sobbing. "Why am I telling you this when I should be focusing on what's happening in our world, this terrifying thing that's happening right now? It feels so selfish. I don't know where this came from, but I can't shake it, and I am just so uncontrollably sad." Her own unfathomable and probably unprocessed loss of a child surfaced in the middle of a national trauma. I know I have told this story before, but as I look over the last 21 years, this is one of the moments that rises up for me when I think about some of the things that I have learned in this church. Because despite my own experiences of grief and loss in my personal life, as a pastor, as a hospital chaplain, and as a hospice chaplain, it wasn't until that conversation with that woman in that moment in this place that she taught me this. Grief is always looking for a way out, and it will take any chance it can get. It's like the crude oil which lies beneath the surface of the earth and is under intense pressure. If you drill down over here and create an escape valve, the pressure is released and the oil comes flying out. But if you drill down over here, the pressure is also released, and the same oil that lies underneath the surface, the same stuff will come out over here. Same stuff, different site. The depths that the psalmist, like so many of us, know so well. Out of the depths, we cry out. Grief and loss, sometimes a lifetime of accumulated grief and loss, especially when it's kept underground and hasn't had a chance to be expressed or processed or brought out into the light of day, can erupt unexpectedly when something bores down deep enough to tap all that lies beneath the surface, or just touches a nerve, or creates the tiniest crack in the surface. The horrors of September 11th can tap into the loss of a child. Watching a sad movie can trigger a feeling of brokenness that's simmering just beneath. These experiences nick the surface, and occasionally something dwelling more deeply within us breaks through. And I'm convinced we don't even need to know what it is that's being tapped. What grief wants from us is not to be understood or analyzed, but to be felt, to be released, and to be trusted. It's not surprising to me that our grief waits to squeeze out until we're in a dark movie theater, or surprises us when we're reading the paper or listening to the radio in our car, or noticing a wounded animal in the park. One of the few places that we're allowed to grieve is at funerals, and for the past 2 years, we've been essentially denied those ritual spaces. In our society, grief is not encouraged and is only allowed in very discreet and limited ways. As many of us have experienced, we're given a very short time to grieve before people expect us to be over it. And the grief of others can make us uncomfortable and ill at ease. Our culture denies grief and loss, and most tragically of all, it denies death. We all of us, come from lineages and people that dealt with death in their own ways. Some of our ancestral cultures and our ancestors were people that wailed. Some danced, some sang, some drank. Some came together as communities to lament, and some held things in private. One of the reasons that I love the Psalms is that they give us language for things that we are taught sometimes to avoid. The Psalms plumb the depth of human experience, and they articulate it all. Here we have models for what it might sound like to cry out to God in agony or pain or loneliness or ecstasy. The Psalms are full of the language of grief and a good place to turn when our own words fail us. Out of the depths I cry to you. Oh God, the bottom has fallen out of my life. If you're looking for something to read in the Bible, I suggest the Psalms. For some of us, there's a lifetime of stuff that's been built up and compressed, like the remains of small plants and animals from ancient seas, covered in sediment and ancient life, rich organic matter from all kinds of living stuff, condensed as the temperature and pressure increase. It's like we're walking around with whole worlds of stuff beneath the surface, rumbling or quiet, ready to blow or settled comfortably. Some of us might not feel it or notice it. Some of us experience it as irritation or anger, self-critique, fear or shame or guilt or blame or depression. It can feel like longing. Sometimes it fuels us. Some of us can sense it and have found ways to befriend it. Sometimes it can be dangerously volatile and can drive us to manage it in ways that aren't life-giving. And we carry grief in our bodies. When my grief bubbles up in uncomfortable ways and I'm not quite able to be at ease with it, for me, I try to eat and tend to push things down with food. That's what I do. Where does your grief live in you? Where in your body can you feel it or touch it? The Mayan translation for the word tumor, I learned this week, is hardened tears. That hit me right here when I learned that. I actually have a hard time crying. I can get deeply moved. I can cry with other people. I can cry for them. But I struggle to cry and express my own grief in tears. So I'm trying to learn to find other ways to be with my grief. Singing, for one, sometimes moving my body, a little yoga or a grief dance if I can do it, or just rocking or swaying. Sometimes lighting a candle. I have a little bowl of water on my desk that I dip my hands into as a substitute for my tears. I hope that you can find ways to honor your own grief and befriend it. I know and I'm sure Kip and Priscilla would be very happy to talk with you or have a conversation about it. And that's the personal stuff. We have such deep communal grief now. Planetary grief, some call it. Species-level grief is what Adrienne Murray Brown calls it. It's a grief that's bigger than us, bigger than but weaving itself into our own losses. Massive and so many unnecessary deaths from COVID. 400 years of damage done by white supremacy, the accelerating loss of species and culture and climate change. We need more ways to grieve together. The Salt Trails Collective is an amazing project here in Philadelphia that our own Nyla Francis has helped to lead, and others in our community, including Priscilla, are involved in. This is a group of people that are creating public grief rituals in Philadelphia, places where people can come together and grieve together. No one explains their loss. Nobody has to explain what's happened or why they're grieving. They don't need to give reasons. Last week, they gathered in the Wissahickon to build an altar to love and collectively honor and express grief. It is really powerful stuff. The great poet Audre Lorde has said that we heal in community. And we do a version of this just by being church. One of the reasons that we do church, that we practice being church, is to create and hold a space, a ritual container that can allow the stuff of our lives to flow, to surface, to sometimes stay below, to sometimes come out in the light of day and the light of love, and know that it's held by something larger than ourselves, held by the Holy One, by God, by Jesus, by community in love. We lament together. We name brokenness. We cry out. I've known so many people in this church, both our physical church and our Zoom church, that have found themselves more than once crying in church. I won't ask you to raise your hand if you're one of them. And it's why Art Knapp, one of our members, finally said, enough. So many of us spend so much time crying in church and we never have tissues. And he walked in with a massive box of, remember this? Shrink-wrapped tissues. Huge amount of tissues. And he went and just sprinkled them liberally in the pews. And since that time, it's become our church administrator, Karen's job, to make sure that those are continually stocked. Maybe our Advent care packages should have included tissues. We need spaces where we can name things, name them to ourselves, to God, maybe those who are here who can witness us and hear us into speech. We witness and hear our children into speech, as we just heard. Kids that feel nervous going up there the first time or every time. Kids that go up and know that this is a place where they can say something important and people are listening. Eli said he would get nervous and still does a little. Emma said she would start walking up to the steps and be thinking, what is it that I want to share today? It's what we do. We name the ways that we're falling apart. We name the things that are happening in our lives. We name times we've screwed up, or we've been hurt, or we've hurt someone else. We name the times that we are sick or tired, or, as Fannie Lou Hamer said, sick and tired. We name the ways that we're failing, or dying, or healing, or in recovery, or relapsing. And maybe we get to name places that we get a glimmer of hope or are just starting to live again. We can tell in this space together what the old spiritual says, how I got over. We can say or whisper or sing or shout and name that the world is so incredibly broken and so heartbreakingly beautiful. In the prayer time that we do each time we worship, we hear or see or just know that there are other people in the room who are experiencing these things too. Even if we will never know their stories, even if we don't know their names, but we might just find ourselves thinking about them on Tuesday for no reason that we can really make sense of. But that's really what prayer is. One of the best images I had of church this week happened yesterday when, after scrambling to make sure we had enough volunteers covering all the things today that needed to be covered, Kip heard back from Stephanie, who you don't see because she's right behind the camera. She said that she could help run the camera and indicated that Sandy, who's also here behind the camera, would be able to help as well. And as I understand it, Stephanie's exact message was, between the two of us, we'll have things in and out of focus. This is what we do at church. Know that together we will have things in and out of focus. That we can get and give permission to be fully who we are, and get and give permission to risk taking the smallest steps toward becoming who we might be next. To testify, to use the old church language, to witness, to celebrate the ways in which love has brought us this far and will not abandon us. Grief isn't just pain. It's a form of love. It's a release. It's a practice. It's medicine. It empties us. It makes room for something new. In the words of the psalm, those who sow in tears will reap in joy. The act of naming our loss and giving expression to grief is spiritual work. So if you're afraid of doing it or afraid it's a waste of time and you're somebody who needs to know that you've got a project, this is good spiritual work. It's work that we don't do alone. We are accompanied and carried by God. We're part of a community that affirms that death is natural and inevitable and sacred. We come from lineages and carry the wisdom and dreams and love of our ancestors. We learn from them and each other as we prepare ourselves to be ancestors one day. We witness to the power and possibility of healing, to resurrection and new life. And we've been handed over the story of Jesus, who knew suffering, struggle, fear, and death. Those who sow in tears will reap in joy. So let us weep. Let us put our hands in the dirt, shut the door, turn on the song, dance in grief, cry if you can, dip your hands in the water if you can't. Someday this week, maybe remember a prayer that someone raised. Think of them, touch your hand to their heart. Let that be your prayer. I'll close with these words by a really incredible person here in Philadelphia, Reverend Retta Morgan, who is a prophet, a poet, a teacher, an artist, and she's one of the leaders of the Salt Trail Collective. Here, she is expressing gratitude for what holds us in grief, cracks us open, delivers balm, touches the deepest ache, calls forth our tears, gives voice to what we cannot, welcomes an infinite range of expression, reminds us to enter the darkness with reverence, invites tenderness and compassion, compels us to move our bodies, take a deeper breath, brings life to what feels lifeless, spills light on the path, offers a moment of beauty, and sings us home to our truth. This is God's good news. Amen.
This is that time in the service when we share the stuff of our lives with one another. And we'll open our prayer time by singing together our sung prayer response, Breath of Heaven. And I'll just sing it and folks can join in with me. Breath of heaven, hold me together, be forever near me. Breath of heaven, breath of heaven, lighten my darkness, pour over me your holiness, for you are holy. Breath of heaven. Amen. And at this time, we take a moment to name and notice that we exist because of you all, because of the variety of gifts that people offer here, including financial gifts. There is information on the screen there on how you can give online. If you give online, if you're here in the sanctuary, we've got a bowl here in the corner, or you can walk stuff over to the office if you want. But we are grateful for all of the ways that people keep this church working and alive. And with that, we can go to our closing song. The singing group will gather around the microphone again, and we can all join together in singing Guide My Feet.
Yes,
Go from this place holding all that you hold inside of you. Go with your joy, sharing your joy. Go with your sorrow, knowing it is there. Live in your grief. Live with those who are grieving. Go and know that all of this, the work of being alive, is holy. Go in peace. Amen.